Russia's Federal Agency for Technical Regulation and Metrology issued a statement banning the sale of four Chinese truck brands, Dongfeng, Foton, FAW, Sitrak, in Russia effective August 1st. The ban includes the Dongfeng DFH4180, Foton BJ4189, FAW CA4250, and CA4180, Sitrak ZZHS, Foton M4L, Dongfeng DFH5200B, Foton H5, and FAW JH6B 8x4 trucks. The reason provided for the ban is that the vehicles in question do not meet mandatory requirements in areas such as braking system efficiency, noise levels, vehicle control device recognition, and installation of emergency service call devices. Additionally, there are multiple violations related to resistance to external electromagnetic radiation, electromagnetic compatibility, seatbelt attachment points, seat and fastening devices, among other issues. The Russian Standards Bureau has stated that manufacturers have been ordered to recall the affected vehicles and halt sales or face fines. In February, Russian Ministry of Industry and Trade publicly stated that three Chinese truck brands were found to have serious defects. The government is planning to implement stricter certification inspection measures and, in extreme cases, may directly revoke the relevant Chinese brand certificates. The Russian automotive industry has expressed strong concerns over China's aggressive pricing tactics, which have led to Chinese vehicles dominating the local market. From January to June, sales of Chinese medium and heavy-duty trucks in Russia reached 28,000 units, demonstrating the strong performance of Chinese automotive companies in the Russian market. Russian truck manufacturer KAMAZ believes that this undermines the long-term development of Russia's domestic automotive industry and squeezes the market space for local brands. Volga Automotive CEO stated, "The influx of Chinese vehicles threatens the survival of Russia's automotive industry." Taking the Sitrak ZZHS as an example, it has consistently ranked among the top-selling trucks in the Chinese market, but now faces challenges in Russia. According to industry insiders, Chinese automakers, in an effort to control costs, use a steel anti-corrosion process that is prone to rusting in extreme cold temperatures of -40 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, Russia's GOST standards impose much stricter requirements for freezing resistance, electromagnetic compatibility, and other aspects. More importantly, many Chinese automakers did not adapt their designs to include the ERA GLONASS emergency call system, which is mandatory in Russia. This ban is not an isolated incident. As early as 2024, Russia launched a three-pronged attack. First, there was a dramatic increase in recycling fees. In October 2024, Russia announced a 70 to 85% increase in scrapping taxes, effectively adding an extra fee of 15% of their car's price per vehicle. For example, a Chinese car priced at 1.5 million rubles or $19,000 would now face an additional 170,000 rubles or $2,200 in recycling fees, enough to purchase another low-cost new car. Moreover, starting in January, the fee will continue to rise by 10 to 20% annually until 2030. This will significantly increase the cost of imports to Russia. Second, blocking the gray channels. At the same time, Russia suddenly announced the removal of tax incentives for the parallel importation of Chinese cars, effectively shutting down the indirect import route through countries like Kazakhstan. Vehicles imported via Central Asian countries are now required to pay custom duties, value-added taxes, and other fees, leading to a sharp drop in Kazakhstan's re-export share from 30% to just 2%. Third, local production requirements. Russia has mandated that foreign automakers either transfer new energy vehicle technologies or set up local production facilities, or else their vehicles will not meet safety standards. In response, Chery has stated in its Hong Kong IPO prospectus that it will reduce its reliance on the Russian market, while Great Wall Motors has suspended the expansion of its factory in Tatarstan. This reflects the deep concerns of Chinese automakers over the policy risks, geopolitical pressures, and the uncertainty of economic returns in the Russian market. Furthermore, earlier this year, Russia introduced new tariffs, with the total tax rate on imported vehicles reaching as high as 38%. Rumors say that Russia is also planning to implement a new calculation standard for cars imported through the Eurasian Economic Union. It is expected that the space for imported vehicles in Russia will be further squeezed. This has caught Chinese dealers off guard. The cost advantage from reduced tariffs is now gone. Customs producers have become more complex, and the cost of selling cars is rising sharply, weakening their competitiveness. In an open-air warehouse on the outskirts of Moscow, rows of brand-new Hongqi, Cherry, and Geely cars are covered in dust, accumulating thick layers in the cold wind. Dealers say, "In the past, we could sell dozens of cars a day, but now we're lucky if we sell one a week." Sales representatives have revealed that in the past, Chinese automakers made a gross profit of $3,000 to $5,000 per vehicle exported to Russia, but recent profits have been squeezed down to only $500 to $1,000, with some models even incurring losses. Even more concerning is a difficulty in cross-border payments, as Western financial sanctions have made it difficult for Russia to make timely payments. This has led to an extended payment cycle for Chinese manufacturers. Chinese car exports to Russia have been halved, and the market concentration is happening much faster than expected. In the first 4 months, Chinese car exports to Russia plummeted by nearly half year on year. Not only were they experiencing the largest drop in history, but also possibly marking the end of the rapid growth period for Chinese automakers in Russia that has lasted for years. From January to April, China's car exports to Russia totaled just 155,000 units, a sharp drop of 150,000 units from 305,000 units during the same period in 2024, representing a 49% year-on-year decline. The decline in April alone was as high as 69%, abruptly ending the honeymoon period of China-Russia automotive trade. Why did Russia suddenly raise taxes? The root cause lies in Chinese automakers treating Russia as a pure import market, focused solely on shipping domestic cars for sale, without willing to set up factories or engage in local production. It's important to note that Russia has long sought to develop its domestic automotive industry. Western car makers have had joint ventures in Russia, which have helped drive employment and supply chains. But Chinese car makers? In 2024, they sold over 1 million vehicles in Russia, but very few of them had local factories. Most cars were pure imports, shipped from China. Russia believes that Chinese automakers are simply here to take advantage, rushing into the market during its empty phase to make quick profits, but not thinking about contributing to the development of the local industry. The rationale is, why should I allow you to keep making money? Raising taxes is not the goal. It's a way to pressure Chinese automakers into either localizing production or leaving. The timing of Russia's regulatory bans coincides with the increasing crisis faced by its domestic automotive industry. In 2024, Chinese heavy truck brand Sitrak captured nearly 1/5 of the Russian truck market, surpassing KAMAZ. Sitrak sold almost 20,000 units, while KAMAZ sold 17,000 units. Chinese truck brands like FAW and Dongfeng also made it into the top 5 truck sellers in Russia. Before the Russia-Ukraine conflict, in 2021, Chinese car brands were barely visible in the top 10 rankings of Russian vehicle sales, which were dominated by European, Japanese, and Korean companies. Undoubtedly, Russian truck manufacturers, whether KAMAZ or others, do not view Chinese truck brands favorably. Why is this the case? The rise of Chinese cars in Russia is like a business blockbuster that plays out the phrase, "strike when your opponent is weak." Since the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war in 2022 and the subsequent heavy sanctions imposed by the West, Russia's truck and car industries have been severely impacted, especially with European, Japanese, and South Korean automotive groups and companies withdrawing from the Russian market. As a result, Chinese trucks, cars, and new energy vehicles have surged into Russia, rapidly capturing market share. From 116,000 units sold in 2021, sales skyrocketed to over 1 million units in 2024, with a market share reaching an astonishing 60%. Multiple models from Cherry, Geely, and Haval became bestsellers. According to the Chinese Passenger Car Association, the surge of Chinese car brands has led to a 63% market share in Russia, while the market share of Russian domestic brands has dropped to 29%. Russia has become China's most important export market, without exception. In 2024, Russia became the largest market for Chinese car exports, with an import volume of 1.16 million units, roughly equivalent to the combined imports of the second to fifth largest markets, Mexico, the UAE, Belgium, and Saudi Arabia. After the initial surge, Chinese cars have not left a good impression in Russia, with quality issues being widely criticized. Earlier this year, Russia's authoritative automotive media, Autonews, conducted a test by placing Chinese and European cars in Siberia's negative 30 degrees Celsius environment for 2 years. The results showed that the Chinese car's chassis rusted like scrap metal, with the door welds rusted through, while the European cars only had slight surface rust. The metal lifespan of European cars can exceed 12 years. In contrast, the corrosion resistance of Chinese cars is less than 1/3 of that to European cars. What's even more disheartening is a survey revealing that 42% of Russians complained about Chinese cars being poor in corrosion resistance and completely unsuitable for our winters, while 24% said the paint is as thin as paper and small stones could chip it off. Consumers have also reported that Chinese car models have relatively short engine and transmission lifespans, with issues arising just after 150,000 kilometers. In terms of durability, they still cannot match the performance of European and Korean models. Why is this happening? It's not that Chinese automakers can't produce good cars, but rather that they've treated Russia as a second-tier market for clearing inventory. Older models are stripped-down versions that don't sell in the domestic market, are simply repackaged with Russian language manuals and shipped to Russia. As for special adaptations for cold weather, such as thicker anti-corrosion coatings for the chassis or upgraded battery heating systems, features that are standard on domestic new energy vehicles, these are often scaled down for the Russian version. One dealer secretly remarked, "Some cars' batteries lose half their charge at negative 20 degrees Celsius. How are Russians supposed to drive in winter?" A deeper issue lies in the trust crisis. Russian influencers have criticized Chinese automakers, saying, Chinese car companies only care about selling cars, not after-sales services. Spare parts take 3 months to arrive, and the smart connectivity features are fully disabled due to server bans. Russia is vast with a sparse population, and in many small towns, the nearest 4S dealership is hundreds of kilometers away. Chinese carmakers' after-sales networks haven't kept up. If a car breaks down and there are no parts for repairs, or if a bumper needs fixing and it takes a month, can Russians not get frustrated? During the surge in sales last year, these problems were covered up by the buying frenzy, but now that sales have dropped, negative reviews have quickly surfaced. Chinese cars equal industrial waste. Once this label is stuck, it's hard to remove. Russia's series of policies, from scrapping taxes and restricting parallel imports to using technical standards as a reason to block China's dumping, can essentially be summed up as setting trade barriers. These measures aim to protect Russia's domestic automotive industry by increasing import costs, closing off gray import channels, enforcing localization, thus weakening the competitiveness of Chinese car makers and clearing the path for local industries. This attitude reflects Russia's contradictory mindset. On one hand, Russia needs China to fill the market gap left by the departure of Western automakers, and on the other, it remains wary of China's expanding influence. Recently, a Chinese businessman posted a video revealing that a Russian buyer slammed the table and said, "You Chinese still don't understand. In the future, we are your only springboard." The negotiation then turned into a form of pressure.
上周呢，我在北京接待了一个俄罗斯来的大老板。
I hosted a big Russian businessman in Beijing who came to discuss cooperation. As soon as we met, he became emotional, slammed the table and said, "You Chinese still don't understand. Soon the US will surround you, and you'll have nowhere to escape. In the future, Russia will be the only gateway for your companies to go global. If you want to enter the US market or go overseas, you have to rely on us as your springboard." As I listened, I couldn't help but sneer. He continued, "I've been talking to your entrepreneurs for 2 days about cooperation, and you still want to discuss conditions for shifting. Soon, your products won't even be able to sell. You're being very direct, but in the future, even if you give us products for free, we might not even want them, because we'll be the only passage for you to break the blockade." So brothers, when you heard this, how do you feel? At that moment, I thought, the war isn't even over yet. The wounds haven't healed. The sanctions haven't been lifted, and you're already thinking how to choke us off? You still dream of us begging for your cooperation, Even imagining yourself becoming the gateway for Chinese enterprises to go global, you really think highly of yourself, don't you? But then I realized what chilled me more. Although he dared to say it, many Chinese entrepreneurs might not actually understand what he meant. After 2 days of discussion, some of the Chinese business owners in the room nodded, some remained silent, but no one dared to say this thing was wrong. I wonder, are we too polite or too naive? With intensifying trade friction with the US, many people are indeed looking towards Russia, but you have to understand this isn't something that can be solved through speculation. It's about whether you have a strategy, whether you have a bottom line, and whether you truly understand the situation. Cooperation is definitely not about begging others or self-deprecation as a springboard. Russia is indeed an opportunity, but if you don't understand what you're doing, you'll quickly realize that the opportunity has turned into a trap. The Chinese businessman in the video expressed concerns about Chinese entrepreneurs falling into Russia's trap. The Russian businessman's aggressive rhetoric reflects Russia's attempt to force concessions from China through a strong stance. He portrayed China as being encircled and in urgent need of Russia, intending to psychologically overpower Chinese businesses and secure more favorable terms for cooperation. By positioning Russia as the only springboard, the Russian businessman may be trying to mask Russia's own weaknesses, such as long-standing sanctions, economic isolation, and dependency on China. By exaggerating Russia's importance, he is testing the limits of Chinese companies, probing whether he can pressure them into accepting unfavorable terms. For Chinese automakers, the Russian market is undoubtedly attractive, but the halving of export volumes and the ongoing pressure from secondary Western sanctions hang over China-Russia automotive cooperation like a sword, placing it in a dilemma. Continuing to deepen ties with the Russian market could invite Western sanctions, while withdrawing would mean abandoning a key export market. The United States and the European Union are closely monitoring China-Russian automotive cooperation, concerned that Chinese automakers may help Russia circumvent sanctions. Although current US sanctions focus on dual-use technologies and do not explicitly ban passenger car trade, the US has warned China not to indirectly support Russia's military needs through car exports, especially large trucks. US lawmakers have specifically named brands such as Great Wall Motor, Chery, and Chang'an, signaling that the West is considering adding automobiles to the sanction list. The European Union has also expressed concerns, fearing that Chinese automakers may be helping Russia rebuild its automotive industry, thereby weakening the overall effectiveness of sanctions. If complete vehicles or key components, such as batteries and chips, are included in the sanction list, Chinese automakers will face risks such as supply chain disruptions and payment settlement issues in their Russian operations. Furthermore, if the West tightens sanctions on Russia further, affecting sectors like shipping insurance and cross-border railways, the China-Russia automotive logistics chain may encounter new obstacles. Chinese automakers are caught in a situation under the dual pressure and shrinking market share in Russia and Western sanctions. On one hand, Russia's trade barriers have directly caused export volumes to be halved, resulting in inventory buildup and skyrocketing costs. On the other hand, Western sanctions, through logistical, financial, and technological restrictions, further compress Chinese companies' operational space. Continuing to deepen ties with Russia would mean facing the three high dilemmas of high costs, high uncertainty, and political risks. In conclusion, China-Russia automotive cooperation remains highly uncertain under the shadow of Western sanctions. Moreover, Russia's automotive industry faces a development crisis due to technological shortcomings and a lack of supply chains. It lacks the technical reserves in automotive-grade chips, hybrid drive technology, and electric drive technology, and is also missing the necessary supplier companies. The chip shortage is especially devastating, with domestic brands like Lada and Kamaz unable to fill the technological gap. This has led to the risk of technological regression in Russia's automotive industry amid the global wave of making everything electric. Unless the Russia-Ukraine war ends and relations between Russia, the US, and Europe are reshaped, the return of large numbers of Japanese, European, and American car makers to the Russian market could potentially reshape the industry. But whether this scenario will occur remains unpredictable.